So hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lucy and in today's video I really wanted to film the books that changed my life in my 20s. So some of you eagle-eyed viewers will probably know that I've recently turned 30, I've reached a landmark age, I feel like the grandma of booktube, what can I say? But I'm really like contemplative at the minute. I'm really trying to go through a phase of like learning about myself and kind of like, I feel like the end of your 20s, you really do look at yourself in a different way. You're very self-reflective, at least I was. I wanted to film this video about the books that changed my life in my 20s because there have been some books which I don't think I would be who I am today, like having not read those. So I thought this video could be super interesting for some of you guys who are maybe in your early to mid 20s and you are looking for some books that may change your life. Or you might just be interested, if you're not in your 20s, what books have been really kind of like key to my journey throughout my 20s. I have seen a few of these videos go around. I know that Lucy Moon did this video a few weeks ago as well, and that really inspired me to make this video because obviously my channel is all about books and I thought this video would be super interesting. But anyway, we are going to get started on two books that I read in my early 20s that probably changed my booktube journey, I would say, and basically made me stick around on booktube for a lot longer. So I wanted to give two shout outs actually to these books, one of which is Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas, the other is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. So I'm going to group these two together because I feel like they are representative of two different stages of my life, but equally are the same type of thing. So let me explain. I first read Throne of Glass, I think when I was 20 years old. So this came out in like, I think I read this in like 2012, 2013. So this book had just come out. I read this book when there was no other books in the series and we were still waiting for Crown of Midnight to come out. I remember pre-ordering Crown of Midnight and I've still got the like signed cover print that you got when you pre-ordered Crown of Midnight. So long time Sarah J Maas fan here. But I remember reading Throne of Glass and that basically set my obsession with Sarah J Maas on path basically, and I became super obsessed with her writing. For me, Throne of Glass was a proper like reintroduction to the fantasy genre, especially with YA. I was reading a lot of YA at the time and reading a lot of fantasy that was kind of different. Like I was reading a lot of like Shadowhunters by Cassandra Clare, like that type of vibe. But this was like real kind of epic fantasy that I hadn't really read in a long time, and this kind of reignited my love for fantasy, which over the course of my 20s I really fully developed. Like my fantasy obsession has reached a new height. Then something called A Court of Thorns and Roses was due to come out, and I think by this point the first three books in the Throne of Glass series had come out, and I received a proof copy of A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is somewhere behind me. And basically when I read that proof, I begged and pleaded Sarah J Maas's publicist in the UK to see if she was coming over to the UK and could I interview her for my booktube channel. So I still speak to that publicist today and she's amazing and has always been so supportive of my channel. She said yes. I got to interview Sarah J Maas on my booktube channel in 2015, I think, and basically that video is my most viewed video to date with like 30,000 views or something, which, you know, probably isn't big compared to some channels, but that is huge for me because that was something that I really put myself out for, and I didn't just let the opportunity come to me. I was like begging and pleading for this opportunity, and I, you know, really just thought I need to put myself out there. I really want to interview Sarah J Maas because she's my favorite author, and if I get this opportunity I will make the most of it. And I'm so glad that I did, because after that I ended up chairing two of Sarah J Maas's UK events. I chaired her Empire of Storms event and her Tower of Dawn event in both Glasgow and Manchester. So it's really led me on a journey where I got to interview, you know, my favorite author for my channel, and also on stage in front of hundreds of people. And honestly, that has like really inspired me to keep going on my channel. It really reignited my love of fantasy books, and also those were my first like chairing experiences, like chairing book events, and I've done like so many more events after that. I've chaired events for Becky Albertalli, Adam Silvera, Victoria Aveyard, so I just feel so lucky, so fortunate and thankful that these books inspired me to push myself out of my comfort zone and allowed me to meet my favorite author, basically. So now that little fangirl fest is done, let me talk about some other books that changed my life in my 20s. The next one is a classic, and I read this in my early 20s. I think I must have been 20 or 21. It is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. So the reason why this classic changed my life is because I was already a big fan of the TV series adapted from this book with Richard Armitage. I'm sure you all know it if you're a fan of classics. But I had one of those experiences with that show where I was so obsessed, and I was like, I almost don't want to read the book because like, will it live up to my love of the show? And I'm so glad that it did. When I read this book, I just had like such an amazing experience. Like, my love for this book, for the characters, it just like was incredible. I've never had an experience like that apart from when I've read like Jane Austen or my favorite poet, John Keats. I really connected with the writing. I really connected with the characters, with Mr. Thornton, with Margaret, and their romance like just completely just bowled me over. And I had previously read another Elizabeth Gaskell book. I think it was Mary Barton. I read that book at university and I really didn't like that book. So this book changed my perception of Elizabeth Gaskell, and I'm super happy that I did read this book because it has just allowed me to see that there are so many classics that have changed my life and I do just fall in love with. So I would urge you all to read North and South if you haven't yet. I would say this classic definitely changed my life in my 20s. It really made me appreciative of Gaskell, and also it just, like, the depths of my obsession with North and South will never not be a thing. Like, this is one of my favorite classics for life now since reading this book. So I'm really grateful for the show, for introducing me to this beautiful story, and I would urge you all to read this book. The next book I want to shout out is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. So this book changed my life in the sense of my first experience where a book truly ripped my heart out of its chest. Like, guys, this is the third book in the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare, which is a spin-off of the kind of Mortal Instruments series. This is a kind of a series set in the past in Edwardian, is it Edwardian England? No, it's Victorian England. And it features the shadow hunters of the London Institute. And there is a romance in this book series between our main character Tessa and Will Herondale. So their romance obviously builds over the 3 books, and Clockwork Princess as the finale to the series, I kind of knew it would be special to me because I had fallen so in love with this series. I did not expect the outpouring of emotion I would get when I turned that final page. Thinking about it now still sends shivers down my spine because I finished it and I was sobbing and I was emotional, and for days afterwards, guys, I'm talking days, I was an emotional wreck. Like, I've never had a book hangover like reading Clockwork Princess, where because I love this series so much, because its characters really felt like friends, because I was rooting for this love story the whole way, like, throughout it, because of certain characters who, I'm not going to spoil things, but some characters have unfortunate ends. I was a miserable wreck because I knew the series was over and I was like, I'm never gonna get that experience back of reading the series for the first time. It was perfection, but it also still breaks my heart to this day. And the reason why this book is in this video is because that book changed my life in the sense of I didn't realize books could do that. And in the words of Cassandra Clare herself in this very series, Tessa, the main character, says, "One must always be careful of books, for words have the power to change us." And that quote could not be more apt for this series. So I bow down to you, Cassandra Clare, for breaking my heart in Clockwork Princess. It was a ride. It was a ride. And I need to reread that series because, like, I need to get those emotions back. But I did not know books had the power to do that to you. And if you've read Clockwork Princess, did you have a similar response? Because I was a broken person and I still vividly remember the emotional flashbacks to that time of my life. The next book I really want to talk about is Secrets of a Summer Night by Lisa Kleypas. Now this is the start of the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas, which is a kind of Victorian Regency romance series, and this series is a very special one to me indeed because it's the first book series I read that was in the historical romance vein, and this was also the first ever Lisa Kleypas book I ever read, and wow, have we come far from then. This is the start, as I said, of the Wallflower series, which is a romance series that takes each of a friendship group in turn. They are all wallflowers, which means that they stay to the side, not getting asked by any suitors for a dance, and this romance series takes each of them in turn and gives them their happily ever after. And Secrets of a Summer Night is such a strong start to the series. Interestingly, it's not my favourite book in the series, but the reason why I wanted to include it in this video is because it was the first book that introduced me to historical romance and the pure escapism that comes from that genre for me right now. So over the past few years, especially in my mid to late 20s, I'd say, I have fully absorbed the historical romance genre. I have devoured it. I have so many favourite authors now. I absolutely adore the genre so much because to me it's pure escapism. The romance is perfect, and also there's a little bit of steam in there as well, which is always fun and exciting. And I have so many favourite memories from reading Lisa Kleypas's books in particular. They've gotten me through some really bad times in my life. They have gotten me through not being able to read. I've been in really bad reading slumps in my 20s, which do come and go. I turn to Lisa Kleypas's books. I turn to Regency romance. There is a reason why I basically consumed a Regency romance book every few days during lockdown, because they are pure escapism and they make you feel so good about yourself. They're just so happy inducing. So I owe it to Lisa Kleypas and I owe it to Secrets of a Summer Night for introducing me to this genre, for making me just completely in love with this cast of characters, and also for introducing me to Lisa Kleypas's books, because wow, are they amazing. I urge you all to read them if you want some sweet escapism. The next book I really want to shout out is the book that changed my life in my 20s and that it introduced me to the adult fantasy genre, and that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. The Final Empire is one of those books where I actually read it because I worked at the publisher who publishes those books. I'm talking like in my early 20s, so it's my first ever job in publishing, and then I had to actually help the team at work kind of create a readathon for his series, and it was then that I read The Final Empire and the rest of the Mistborn series, and I fell in love with it so much because adult fantasy was always a bit intimidating for me, and the books are so long, and I was just like, you know, I bet there won't be a romance, which is so important to me that there's a romance in a fantasy novel. But it's changed my perception of adult fantasy and it's allowed me to read so many more adult fantasy books. And the skill of Brandon Sanderson's writing, the incredible magic system The Final Empire introduces, characters are perfect, and I really do owe it to The Final Empire for showing me that adult fantasy doesn't have to be dry, it doesn't have to be really long. I mean, the books are long, but every single page is action-packed and brilliant. Like, I think it removed a lot of the fear for me from adult fantasy, which now I'm 30 and I've been reading adult fantasy for the last, say, 6 years or so. I can see now, like, wow, I'm so happy that I read The Final Empire because it's given me the push in the right direction I needed to get into this genre, and now it's one of my favourite all-time genres. Okay, the next book I quickly want to shout out is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. So I have quite like a personal story about this book, I guess. As you all may know, I do work in book publishing. I'm a publicist. I started my publishing career 8 years ago, which is insanity to me because I'm getting old. But anyway, when I worked at my first publishing company, Orion Books, this was the first book I did my first publicity campaign on. This was my first author tour, and as a big YA fan, I couldn't believe my luck that I got to do the UK publicity for Red Queen in paperback, and I got to be responsible for introducing it to readers in the UK, and that still is crazy to me. The reason why this book is so important to me and changed my life in my 20s is because it was my first ever UK author tour, where Victoria and I toured Scotland for the day and finished with an event in Waterstones in Glasgow. And also I got to really like know Victoria really well during that day, and like we just really hit it off, and she is the most amazing, lovely, brilliant person, and her writing is super impressive. She is so great at crafting fantasy worlds, and Red Queen just holds a special place in my heart. So I just wanted to say this book definitely changed my life in my 20s. It kind of confirmed that when you really love reading a book and then you get to work on the publicity for that book and be responsible for introducing this book to other people, it's why I love doing my job so much. It's why I love being in book publishing. So I just wanted to give this book a special shout out. I also don't know if you can see that, but it's also signed by Victoria. It says, "To Lucy, I was enchanted to meet you. I hope I never shake you off. Love, Victoria." I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan, hence all the references there. But I absolutely adore Victoria. I love this book. It has a very special place in my heart. Okay, we're on to our penultimate book. And this is a non-fiction book, actually, that I would say probably had the biggest profound effect on me in my 20s, and it is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. So you've probably heard about this book. It's actually been made into a TV show this year, I think, or a movie that Dolly Alderton is kind of like assisting with the production of it, which is really cool. This is a non-fiction book from journalist Dolly Alderton, who basically recounts her 20s. This book is centered around everything she knew at 21, everything she knew at 25, everything she knew at 28, for example. And it breaks it down into like different areas of her life. So everything I know about friends at 21, everything I knew about dating at 21. And I read this, I think, like just after my 25th birthday. And I had the mid-20s crisis, guys. If you have survived your 20s, you may have experienced a mid-20s crisis when you're kind of like done with education, you know, you're in a job and adult life seems very heavy. And I really was having that experience when I read this book, because I was dating in London and I hadn't met my current partner yet. And I was like, what is the point? This is all awful. Like, I just wasn't having a good time. Like, I was just like, I don't know what life is supposed to be about, because this can't be it. I was in such a rut, but this book helped me put things into perspective. Dolly, when she writes this book, is on the cusp of turning 30 and just made me realize like so many things about my life. And I think what the core message is about this book is you do not need to have one singular relationship, a romantic relationship, that defines your life. Like, that doesn't make you who you are. What makes us who we are is like our relationships with all the other people around us, you know, your friends, your family. Like, and the message I got from this book is like, your friends will be the people who will stick by you forever. Like, boyfriends may come and go, but like your friends will always be there for you. And like, oh, that message just was really like groundbreaking for me. And I was like, you know what, I've got so much more in my life. Like, I'm so grateful. It put living in London in perspective as well, because living in London is a key part of this book. Basically, I could relate to this so much. Every page I was like, holy crap, this is basically my life. So if you are stuck in a rut, if you want to read a book that will really make you reassess your situation, read this book, because I bet you will relate to a lot of the things. If you identify as a woman in your 20s, I think you will get a lot from this, so you're welcome. But wow, did this book change my life? 100%. So guys, that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit more of a personal video from me. Do let me know if you want more videos like this on my channel. I'd be really interested to let you guys in a bit more and like share some more meaningful, you know, conversations around books. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you did enjoy it, and I'll see you very, very soon with another video. Bye.